The twin suns of Vetra 9 blazed over the open marketplace. Dust hung in the air, heavy and orange. Dozens of aliens crowded together, their voices a mix of rage and fear. In the middle of the chaos, two sisters knelt on the cracked stone road. One of them, small, fragile, her violet skin marked with strange glowing lines, was barely conscious. The other, older by a few years, held her tightly, crying out for mercy. Please. She didn't do anything. The alien girl screamed, her voice cracking under the noise of the crowd. But mercy was not something the mob cared about today. They shouted back at her, calling the younger one a taint, a curse, a half-blood. Stones flew through the air, one after another, striking the ground around the sisters. One hit the older girl on the shoulder. She flinched but didn't let go. And then came a sound that silenced everything. A heavy, steady footstep. From between the lines of screaming aliens, a human walked forward. His clothes were torn from travel, his boots caked with desert dust, and his eyes sharp like blades. His name was Rain, though few here knew it. The crowd fell quiet, their anger turning to confusion. Humans were rare on this planet, and they never interfered in alien affairs. The girl looked up at him, her breath trembling. Please, she whispered, save my sister. I'll be your slave forever. Her words struck him harder than the stones that had fallen. The mob started shouting again, this time at him.
Stay out of this, human.
This is not your fight. But Rain didn't move away. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over the two girls. Then make it my fight, he said in a low, calm voice. A stone flew toward him. He caught it midair. He looked at it, then tossed it aside like it was nothing. The mob hesitated. The human didn't look angry. He looked certain. That made them nervous. Why are you protecting them? One of the elders shouted from behind the crowd. That one's blood is mixed with yours. Her kind will destroy us. Rain turned his head slowly. She's a child, he said. You're destroying yourselves. The mob didn't listen. Another stone came flying. This one hit Rain square in the chest. He grunted but stayed standing. Then another. And another. The girl screamed for him to run. Instead, he moved forward, placing himself directly between the mob and the two sisters. His voice boomed over the chaos. No one touches them. The marketplace froze. Even the wind stopped moving for a heartbeat. His hand reached for the ground. He picked up a long metal pole lying in the dirt and drove it deep into the cracked stone floor. The sound echoed through the square like thunder. This line, he said, pointing to the ground. You cross it, you face me. No one dared to move. The aliens looked at one another. He was one man, one outsider, but he stood like an army of his own. The younger sister coughed weakly, her blood mixing with the dust. Rain knelt beside her, tore a strip from his own sleeve, and pressed it against her wound. The older sister's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't understand him. Why would a human, a stranger, risk his life for two alien girls marked as outcasts? One of the men in the mob raised his weapon and shouted, "He's protecting filth!" Rain looked up at him. His voice dropped low, cold as iron. Throw that, and you'll never throw again. For a second, no one breathed. Then slowly the mob began to back away. Fear spread faster than anger ever could. The human stood unmoving, every muscle ready to fight. He didn't blink until the last of the crowd scattered. Silence returned to the marketplace, broken only by the sound of the younger girl's weak breathing. Rain turned to the older one. What's your name? She hesitated. Lyra, she said softly. All right, Lyra, he said. We need to get her out of here before they come back. She nodded, still shaking. Her sister's head rested on her lap, eyes half closed. You shouldn't have helped us, she whispered. They'll kill you too. He glanced at the empty street, then back at her. They can try. Together they lifted the wounded sister and began moving through the ruins behind the market. The ground was littered with burnt banners and broken stalls. Far behind them, the crowd began to gather again, angry voices rising once more. Rain didn't look back. In that moment, under the burning suns of Vetra 9, an unspoken promise was made. The alien girl had offered her freedom for her sister's life. The human had taken on a fight that wasn't his, and somewhere in the dusty wind, fate began to twist their lives together. Forever. The streets of Vetra 9 twisted like veins of rust and smoke. Rain moved fast through them, carrying the smaller girl in his arms while Lyra followed, limping beside him. Every few steps she looked back, afraid the mob would reappear. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind. Angry voices, mechanical boots, the whine of drones cutting through the air. They reached the edge of the old quarter, where the walls were cracked and covered in alien symbols. The air smelled of oil and ash. Rain stopped under a broken archway, breathing hard but steady. He set the younger sister down on a patch of shade. Her skin flickered faintly with bioluminescent veins, half alien, half human, and fading fast. Lyra knelt beside her, whispering, "Stay with me, Kyle." "Please." Rain scanned the rooftops. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "That crowd, someone is leading them." Lyra looked up, fear and confusion in her eyes. "They call her impure," she said. "They say her blood will poison our kind. But she's just my sister." Rain's jaw tightened. He'd seen this before, different planet, same hate. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small medical patch. "This will help her breathe," he said, pressing it against Kyle's chest. The soft hum of nanotech filled the silence. A moment later, voices approached from the street. The mob had regrouped, led by an alien elder wrapped in black cloth and golden rings. His voice carried like thunder. "Hand them over, human. You have no place in our judgment." Rain stepped forward, placing himself between the sisters and the mob again. He didn't shout. His calm made his words cut deeper. "Judgment? Beating a dying child isn't judgment." The elder's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand our laws." Rain took another step, boots scraping against the stone. "Then change them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. No one spoke to the elders like that. The mob spread out, surrounding the broken courtyard. Dozens of glowing eyes stared at the human. Some looked unsure, others filled with hate. Rain reached behind him and lifted a piece of broken metal pipe. His grip was steady, his stance firm. "You cross this space," he said, "and I won't miss." The elder raised his hand. "You think you can fight all of us?" Rain's gaze didn't waver. "I don't need to. I just need to make you afraid to try." Something in his tone froze the air. Even Lyra felt it. This strange, calm danger that clung to him. He didn't act like a hero or a soldier. He acted like a man who'd already seen too much death and refused to add more. The mob hesitated. Then one of them, a tall alien with red scales, rushed forward with a blade. Rain moved like lightning. He sidestepped, caught the alien's wrist, twisted, and slammed him to the ground in one motion. The crowd gasped as the blade clattered away. Rain didn't kill him. He just looked down and said softly, "Go home." The defeated alien crawled backward, terrified. The others began to murmur. Doubt spread. Even the elder stepped back a little. Rain turned his head toward Lyra. "Get your sister ready to move," he said quietly. Lyra nodded and wrapped Kale in her cloak. "Where will we go?" "There's an old factory past the ridge," Rain replied. "Humans used it before the war. No one will look for you there." She hesitated. "And you?" He met her eyes. "I'll buy us time." Before she could argue, he stepped forward again, standing tall in front of the mob. "If any of you think this is justice," he said, his voice echoing off the broken walls, "then come test it." No one moved. The air buzzed with fear and silence. Finally, the elder spat on the ground. "You protect the cursed. You will share her fate." He gestured, and the mob slowly began to retreat, muttering threats under their breath. Rain waited until the last one disappeared into the distance. Only then did he turn back. Lyra stared at him, stunned. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "You don't even know us." Rain wiped the dust from his hands. His eyes softened. "Because someone once saved me when I didn't deserve it," he said. "Guess I'm just returning the favor." Kyle stirred, her small hand clutching his sleeve. "Thank you," she whispered weakly. Rain gave a short nod. "Don't thank me yet. We're not safe." He looked up at the darkening sky. In the distance, a low rumble echoed, the sound of drones lifting off again. The hunt wasn't over. He picked up Kale once more and motioned for Lyra to follow. Together they vanished into the maze of ruins, heading toward the dead factory beyond the horizon. Behind them, the city of Vatra 9 burned with hatred and fear. And as the first lightning storm rolled across the twin suns, Rain whispered under his breath, "They want to fight. They'll get one." The rain came hard that night. It washed the blood and dust from the streets, turning the metal rooftops into drums that echoed across the silent city. Far from the center of Vatra 9, hidden behind the ruins of an old shipping yard, stood the burned-out factory Rain had spoken of. Its walls were blackened from war, and the floor was scattered with broken machines that hadn't moved in decades. Rain pushed open the rusted door with his shoulder and stepped inside. Lyra followed close behind, her sister still unconscious in her arms. The air smelled of rust and ozone, but it was safe, at least for now. He found an old bench and cleared it of debris. "Lay her here," he said quietly. Lyra obeyed, gently placing Kale down. The younger girl's breathing was weak but steady. Her glowing veins flickered under her skin, lighting the dim room like threads of starlight. Rain knelt beside her and checked the medical patch he'd applied earlier. "Her vitals are low, but she'll live," he murmured. Lyra looked around the empty room, her voice shaking. "Why are you helping us?" "You don't even know who we are." Rain didn't look up. "Because I don't like mobs," he said simply. "And because no one else would." She studied him for a moment. His tone wasn't gentle, it was tired, like a man who'd seen too many people left to die. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the sound of rain and distant thunder. Then, as Rain searched the room for supplies, his flashlight caught something strange on the wall, a faded human logo. Letters carved in Old Earth language, Project Harmony. He frowned and brushed off the dust. Underneath the text was a symbol, a circle of light surrounding a small star. It matched the faint mark that pulsed on Kale's shoulder. Rain's eyes narrowed. "I've seen this before," he said. Lyra turned quickly. "What is it?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he knelt beside Kale and compared the mark to the one on the wall. Perfect match. This place, it wasn't just a factory. It was one of the labs, human research stations from the war era. Lyra looked confused. "Labs for what?" Rain's voice dropped. "For creating hybrids. Children with both human and alien DNA." The words hit her like a shock. "That's impossible. Humans left Vatra 9 decades ago." "Why would they?" "Because they were trying to make peace," Rain said. "They thought if they could merge species, they could end the fighting. But when the experiments were discovered, both sides called it a crime. The colonies destroyed the labs, and the children." Lyra froze. Her eyes widened, tears building in silence. "Kale, she was born in one of those places," she whispered. Rain nodded slowly. "That's why the mob came for her. That mark on her skin, it's proof she's part of the project. To them, it's a curse. To someone else?" He looked around the ruins, his voice turning darker. "It might be a key." Lightning flashed through a broken window, lighting his face for a second. He looked older than before, haunted. Lyra didn't understand everything, but she could see one thing clearly. This man had been part of the old wars. He wasn't just a traveler. He'd been there. Kyle stirred weakly. Her small voice cut through the silence. "They said I shouldn't exist." Rain leaned closer. "They're wrong," he said softly. "Existing is the bravest thing you've ever done." Lyra held her sister's hand tightly, tears falling now. "We'll leave this planet," she whispered. "We'll find somewhere safe." Rain shook his head. "Running won't help. They'll keep coming. Someone out there wants to erase every trace of this project. That means you." The sound of thunder rolled again, but this time it wasn't thunder. The ground vibrated slightly and a faint red light blinked through the cracks in the ceiling. Drones, search units scanning the area. Rain moved fast. He turned off his flashlight and pulled a tarp over the glowing mark on Kyle's arm. "They're tracking by heat and light," he said. "We have 5 minutes, maybe less." Lyra's panic returned. "What do we do?" Rain scanned the room, then spotted a maintenance tunnel half buried under rubble. "There," he said. "It leads to the drainage system. We can move through the tunnels to the ridge." Lyra hesitated. "And if they catch us?" Rain gave a faint, grim smile. "Then we make sure they regret it." He picked up a metal rod from the floor, its edges still sharp. His movements were precise, almost practiced. Lyra realized he wasn't just brave, he was trained. A soldier once, maybe, or worse. Kyle opened her eyes just as he lifted her into his arms. "You're safe now," he told her quietly. "But you'll need to be strong. Stronger than any of them." She nodded weakly, her light dimming as she drifted back into sleep. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. The drones were closing in. Rain poured through the roof as lightning split the sky, casting flashes over the words Project Harmony on the wall. Rain looked at it one last time. "They tried to make peace," he whispered. "And all they made was pain." Then he turned to Lyra. "Let's move." They disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel just as a red beam swept across the room. The empty factory stood silent again, except for one faint glow still burning on the wall like a heartbeat that refused to die. Cold air rushed through the tunnel as Rain led the sisters deeper underground. Water dripped from the cracked pipes above, echoing softly in the dark. Lyra followed close behind, holding a dim lantern while Kale lay weak in Rain's arms. The younger girl's glow had faded almost completely now. "Keep quiet," Rain whispered. "The drones use sound sensors too." They moved carefully, stepping over broken grates and wires. The tunnels seemed endless, twisting like veins beneath the old city. Every few minutes, a deep vibration shook the floor. The drones were scanning the ground above. Lyra's voice trembled. "Will they find us?" "Not if we stay low," Rain replied. "They'll search the surface first, but we have to keep moving. This place connects to the ridge outside the city." After a long walk, they reached an iron gate half buried in mud. Rain forced it open with his shoulder, the hinges screaming softly. Beyond it lay an open cavern where old transport pods once rested. Rusted machines stood like bones forgotten by time. Rain gently set Kyle down against the wall. "We'll rest here for a minute," he said. "She needs it." Lyra sat beside her sister, brushing her silver hair back. "She's burning up," she whispered. Rain knelt, checking the medical patch again. "Her body's fighting itself," he said quietly. "Half of her is human. The other half? Something this world doesn't want to understand." Lightning flashed faintly through a crack above, and the rumble of thunder followed. Lyra looked up. "You said humans built this place. Does that mean you—" "Yes," Rain cut her off gently. "I was a soldier, long ago, when we still believed peace was something we could force." Lyra studied him, seeing something heavy behind his calm eyes. "And now?" "Now," he said. "I just try to stop people from doing what I used to do." Before she could respond, a low hum filled the air. The ceiling lights flickered. Motion sensors had been triggered. Rain's head snapped up. "They're here." He grabbed his weapon, a sharpened metal pipe, and motioned for Lyra to stay down. "Hide her behind those crates. Don't make a sound." Lyra dragged her sister behind a row of rusted containers. The hum grew louder. A drone descended through the hole in the roof, its red scanner slicing through the darkness. The beam swept across the cavern, pausing on broken metal and piles of scrap. Then it turned toward Rain. He stood perfectly still, hidden in shadow. The drone hovered closer, scanning the air around him. Rain waited until it was within reach. Then, he struck. The metal pipe pierced the drone's core with a burst of sparks. The machine let out a shriek of static and crashed to the floor, its light dying instantly. But before Rain could relax, more engines roared above. "3 more inbound," he said sharply. "They've locked onto the signal." Lyra's heart pounded. "What do we do?" Rain pointed toward a narrow tunnel at the far end. "There's an old exit there. Go now. But what about you?" "I'll follow," he said. "Go." She hesitated for a second, then lifted Kale again and ran. The glow from her sister's veins dimly lit the path ahead. Behind her, the sound of blaster fire echoed through the cavern as drones swooped down on Rain's position. He moved fast, rolling behind a fallen beam. Sparks lit the air as energy shots slammed into the metal around him. He grabbed the broken drone beside him and ripped out its core, then threw it like a grenade toward the others. The explosion sent a wave of light through the room. Lyra screamed as the shockwave reached the tunnel, dust raining down from the ceiling. "Rain, I'm fine," his voice called back. "Keep moving." She didn't stop. Her feet splashed through shallow water as the tunnel curved upward. After what felt like forever, faint moonlight appeared ahead. They burst out into the open ridge, a rocky plain overlooking the desert. Wind howled across the empty landscape. Lyra laid Kale down under a broken shelter. "We made it," she gasped. Moments later, Rain emerged from the tunnel, covered in dust and smoke. He limped slightly but was still standing. The sky behind him glowed red from drone fires. "They'll report back," he said between breaths. "We have maybe an hour before reinforcements come." Lyra looked at him, shaken. "You could have left us. Why didn't you?" Rain looked out across the desert horizon. "Because I've seen what happens when good people look away," he said quietly. "And I won't be one of them again." The wind carried silence between them. Kale stirred weakly, whispering something in her sleep, a name neither of them recognized. Rain turned toward the horizon where faint lights blinked in the distance. An old military outpost, still active. That's where we're going next, he said. If she's part of Project Harmony, there'll be files there. Maybe answers. Maybe a cure, Lyra frowned. And if they're waiting for us? Rain's lips curved into a half smile. Then we stop running. He looked at the small girl sleeping beside them, her faint glow reflecting in his eyes. The hunt's not over, he said softly. It's just beginning. Lightning cracked across the sky again, casting the three of them in sharp, ghostly light. The storm was returning, and so were their hunters. But this time, the human wasn't just protecting them. He was preparing for war. The desert night stretched wide and silent. Cold winds swept across the ridge, carrying dust that shimmered faintly under the twin moons. A small fire flickered near the ruins of the shelter, its glow painting soft light on the three figures huddled beside it. Rain sat with his back against a rock, sharpening a broken knife against stone. The sparks rose and vanished into the dark. A few feet away, Kale slept wrapped in Lyra's cloak, her breathing shallow but calm. Her glowing veins had dimmed almost to nothing now, like the light inside her was giving up. Lyra watched her sister, her hands trembling slightly. She's getting weaker, she whispered. Rain nodded, his face unreadable. I know, we'll reach the outpost by dawn. If there's any medicine left there, it might help. She looked at him for a long moment. Why do you keep risking yourself for us? He paused, the knife still in his hand. Because someone has to, he said simply. Then he added softer, and because I failed someone once. I won't do it again. The fire popped quietly between them. For a moment peace returned, a fragile calm between the storms that had chased them for days. But deep inside Lyra, guilt and fear twisted together like wires. She remembered the voice from the communication tablet she'd stolen before they fled, the message from her own people. Bring the hybrid to us, Lyra. We will protect her. The human cannot be trusted. He carries the code they want. She'd ignored it then, but the more she thought about it, the more doubt crept in. Could it be true? Could Rain be using them? Why else would a human soldier know so much about their marks, their past, their value? Later that night, while Rain kept watch, Lyra quietly turned on the small transmitter again. Static filled the air for a moment before a voice came through, a cold, metallic whisper. Do you have the hybrid? Yes, she whispered back, her voice shaking. She's alive. Good, bring her to the old ridge crosspoint. We'll take her to safety. Lyra hesitated. And the human? The voice paused. Leave him. He's part of what made her. He won't let her live. The call ended, leaving only silence and wind. Lyra stared at the faint glow of the transmitter in her hand, her heart racing. They'll protect her, she told herself. They're my people. When morning came, the desert was pale and quiet. The storm clouds had moved away, leaving the sky a deep violet. Rain packed their few supplies while Lyra helped Kale drink a little water. Ready? He asked. Lyra nodded, though her chest felt heavy. As they began walking toward the outpost, she stayed a few steps behind, her hand brushing the hidden transmitter in her pocket. Every step felt like a lie pressing deeper into her skin. By midday, the sun burned high and the air shimmered with heat. The old outpost appeared in the distance, half buried in sand but still standing. Rain slowed down, scanning the horizon through an old visor. No movement. Looks abandoned, he said, but Lyra's stomach tightened. She knew someone was waiting, just not for him. They entered through a broken gate. Inside, the place was silent except for the wind whistling through metal beams. Old earth flags hung torn from the walls. Rain began searching the control room for power cells while Lyra guided Kyle to sit near a wall. Stay here, she whispered to her sister. I'll be right back. Kale looked up weakly. Lyra, don't go. Lyra forced a smile. It's okay. I'll fix everything. She stepped out of the room and moved down a narrow hall, her pulse hammering in her ears. Outside the far doorway, two alien figures appeared in the sand. Her people. They raised their hands to signal her forward. This way, one of them said softly. Quickly. Lyra turned back toward the control room. Rain was still searching, unaware. Guilt clawed at her throat. She took one more step toward the door and then froze. The ground beneath her shook with a deep metallic rumble. Rain's voice shouted, Lyra! Get down! Too late! A drone burst through the roof, its red scanner flashing. It fired a pulse that knocked her off her feet. The two aliens outside screamed as the blast tore through the sand, disintegrating them instantly. Rain ran to her side, dragging her behind cover. They tracked us, he shouted. You led them here, how? Her breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to save her. Rain's expression hardened, but there was no anger, only disappointment. You trusted the wrong people. He pulled a small EMP charge from his belt and threw it toward the drone. The explosion shook the entire outpost, sending smoke and sparks flying. The machine crashed, burning into the sand. When the noise faded, Lyra sat trembling. Cale crawled toward her, weak but alive. Sister. Lyra broke down. I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. Rain crouched beside them, breathing hard. We all make mistakes, he said quietly. But we don't get to stop now. Whoever sent those men knows where we are. More will come. Lyra looked at him through her tears. Why didn't you leave me? He gave a faint smile. Because if I left everyone who betrayed me, I'd be alone forever. Outside, the desert wind roared, carrying the smell of smoke and metal. In the far distance, lights moved across the horizon. More drones, more hunters. Rain looked at them both and stood tall again. We finish this tonight, he said. No more running. The firelight flickered in his eyes as he reloaded his weapon. Lyra watched him, realization dawning that this human, this stranger, was the only reason they were still alive. And somewhere deep inside, under her guilt and fear, something new began to grow. Respect. Maybe even something stronger. But there was no time to feel it. The hunt had found them again. The sky over Vetra 9 turned black before dawn. Thunder rolled across the desert like a war drum. Wind tore through the sand dunes, twisting them into clouds that swallowed the horizon. The storm was coming, and so were the hunters. Inside the half-destroyed outpost, Rain worked fast. Sparks flew as he rewired an old generator, his hands covered in oil and dust. Lyra crouched nearby, holding Cale close. The younger girl was burning with fever, her faint glow pulsing faster with each breath. She's getting worse, Lyra said softly, voice cracking. Rain didn't stop working. I know, but I can use the generator's core to power the med unit. It'll stabilize her, if we're lucky. Outside, faint red lights blinked through the sandstorm, drones circling closer. Lyra's fear returned like a knife twisting in her chest. They found us again. Rain tightened a bolt and looked up. Good. Let them come. His calm terrified her more than the storm. He wiped sweat from his forehead and walked to the window. Lightning split the sky, revealing dozens of figures moving in the dust, machines and soldiers alike. Lyra stepped beside him. We can't fight them all. He gave a half smile. We don't have to. We just need to hold long enough for you to get Cale out. She shook her head. No, we stay together. Rain looked at her with steady eyes. You promised your sister you'd protect her. Keep that promise. I'll buy you time. Before she could answer, the first explosion hit. The walls trembled. Dust rained down from the ceiling. A metal door bent inward as blaster fire tore through it. Go! Rain shouted. He grabbed his rifle, patched together from scavenged parts, and fired through the smoke. The beam cut through the dark, striking one of the drones. It exploded in a burst of sparks. Lyra dragged Cale toward the back exit, tears mixing with the sand. But when she looked back, she saw Rain standing firm in the doorway, his figure framed by flashes of lightning and fire. Alone, defiant, unbroken. Outside, armored hunters advanced through the storm. Their leader's voice boomed through a speaker, harsh and metallic. Humans surrender the hybrids. This world rejects them and you. Rain's reply came like thunder itself. Then this world needs to learn better. He threw a shock charge toward the enemy line. The explosion ripped through the sand, scattering soldiers and drones alike. The desert lit up in a wall of blue fire. Lyra covered Cale's ears as the blast echoed. He's going to die, she whispered. Cale's weak voice broke through the roar. He won't. Not yet. She tried to stand, her small hand glowing brighter now, her mark burning like molten silver. Lyra turned, terrified. Cale, no. But the girl's eyes were distant, almost shining with something not entirely human. I can stop them, she said faintly. It's inside me. I can feel it. Rain heard her voice from across the room and turned. No, don't use it. You'll burn yourself out. The wall shook again as another wave hit. Rain fired until his weapon overheated, then drew his knife and charged. He moved through smoke and sand like a shadow, every strike precise, every motion desperate. A shot grazed his shoulder. He stumbled but didn't fall. Another blast tore the ground near him, sending shrapnel into his side. Still, he pushed forward, protecting the entrance, shielding the two sisters behind him. Lyra cried out, running to him. "You'll die!" He looked at her through the dust, blood streaking his face. "Maybe," he said softly. "But not before they do." Lightning flashed again, brighter than before, and then Kale screamed. A surge of light burst from her body, flooding the outpost with a wave of energy. The hunters froze, blinded. Every metal object in the room began to hum. The generator's core overloaded, glowing white. Rain realized what was happening. He turned toward Lyra. "Get her out now!" Lyra grabbed her sister, pulling her toward the door. "What about you?" "I'll hold it," he shouted. "Go!" She hesitated only a second before running. The sandstorm swallowed her screams as she carried Kale outside. Behind them, the outpost exploded in a blast of blinding light. The shockwave rolled across the desert, lighting the sky like sunrise. The drones fell from the air, their circuits fried. When the light faded, only silence remained. Broken, soft, endless silence. Lyra fell to her knees, shielding Kale with her body. The girl was barely breathing, her glow flickering weakly. "Rain," Lyra whispered through tears. "He's gone." Kale's voice was faint but certain. "No, he's not gone. He's just somewhere else." As the storm finally began to die, the first rays of morning light touched the dunes. The air smelled of rain and smoke. Lyra looked toward the ruins of the outpost. Nothing left but broken metal and drifting sand. But in the distance, under the fading storm clouds, a faint blue light blinked once. Twice, like a heartbeat, a signal, Rain's signal. The storm was gone. The twin suns rose slowly over the desert, lighting the world in gold and ash. The sand still carried the smell of smoke from the destroyed outpost. Nothing moved for miles, only the whisper of the wind. Lyra walked through the wreckage, her cloak torn and face streaked with dust. She carried Kale on her back, the younger girl's head resting weakly against her shoulder. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she kept walking, because stopping meant breaking the promise she made. The ruins were silent, except for the crackle of dying fires. Pieces of metal glowed faintly in the sand, the last remains of the battle. And there, half buried near the center, she saw something that made her heart stop. Rain's jacket, torn and burned, but still recognizable. She fell to her knees beside it, hands shaking as she lifted it from the sand. It smelled faintly of smoke and steel. Her eyes filled with tears. "You said you'd come back," she whispered, her voice breaking. Kale stirred, her soft voice trembling. "He did come back, Lyra. Just not how we think." Lyra looked down at her sister. "What do you mean?" Kale pointed weakly toward the far horizon. A faint blue light blinked there, slow, steady, rhythmic. Not fire, not lightning. A signal beacon pulsing from somewhere deep beneath the sand. Rain's signal. Hope hit Lyra like air after drowning. "He's alive," she whispered. "He must be." She started toward the light, but Kale caught her sleeve. "Wait, he wouldn't want you to chase him. He'd want you to live." Lyra froze. The desert wind tugged at her hair, carrying echoes of Rain's last words. "Keep your promise." She sank down beside Kale and held her close. For the first time since the chaos began, she allowed herself to cry. Quietly, helplessly, but honestly. The tears left streaks through the dust on her face. When the sun climbed higher, they began walking again. Not toward the signal, but away from it, toward the distant mountains that shimmered at the edge of the desert, a place where no one would look for them. Days passed. They found an abandoned shelter built into the rocks once used by miners. It became their home. Lyra repaired broken solar panels and scavenged old human tech, while Kale slowly healed. Her glow returned, gentler now, not bright with pain, but warm with life. As months turned into years, the sisters built something new. The small shelter became a refuge for others, half-blood children, runaway aliens, orphaned humans, those who didn't fit anywhere else. They called it Haven. Every night when the twin suns disappeared, Lyra would step outside and look up at the stars. She'd see the faint, blinking light far to the east, still pulsing like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Sometimes she would whisper to it, "Thank you, Rain, we're still here." Kale grew stronger each year. The strange power inside her became stable, no longer burning her from within, She used it to help others, healing, repairing, protecting. People began to call her the Star Child, but she never forgot the man who had saved her life and changed their fate. One evening, when the children were asleep and the desert air was cool, Kyle joined her sister outside. "Do you think he's really gone?" she asked softly. Lyra smiled sadly. "He's too stubborn to die." They sat together in silence, watching the blinking light. And then, without warning, it changed. One long pulse, then 3 short ones. A pattern, a message. Lyra's breath caught. "That's Morse code," she whispered. "Old human language," Kale frowned. "What does it say?" Lyra's lips parted as she translated it slowly, her voice trembling. "I'm still here." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The desert stretched quiet and endless around them. Then Kale smiled through tears. He kept his promise, Lyra nodded. "So will we." Years later, when stories of Haven spread across Vetra 9, people told tales of 2 sisters who defied the old world, one glowing like starlight, the other fierce as fire. They spoke of a human who had stood alone against an army, who had taught them that courage had no race, no blood, no border. And on nights when the wind was right, travelers crossing the desert claimed they could see a faint blue light moving across the dunes. Never closer, never gone. Some said it was a lost soldier's signal. Others said it was a guardian watching over the stars he once tried to protect. But Lyra and Kale knew the truth. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a memory. It was a promise. Still alive, still shining. And as Kale looked to the sky, her soft voice carried into the wind. "We're free now." Because he believed we could be. The twin suns rose again, spilling golden light across the sands of Vetra 9, where pain had once ruled and hope had finally taken root. Somewhere beyond that horizon, the signal blinked once more. Rain was still out there,